Hello everyone. The title of my TOK project was Theories, Models, and Our Perception of the Natural World. Now for my deconstruction, my real life situation was a space telescope using the sun as a lens, and to summarize this, the concept was first hypothesized by Einstein. The scientists have suggested that we may be able to use the sun's gravity as a lens to view with great detail distant exoplanets with a resolution of several kilometers, meaning that we would be able to see clouds, continents, and even cities, should they exist, on the celestial planets we decide to view. Even now, the Hubble Space Telescope can only take pictures of planets in our solar system with a resolution of 20 to 30 kilometers squared, meaning that the resolution on a gravitational lens, which they calculated to be about 10 kilometers squared, would give sharper images than Hubble can of planets in our very own solar system. Now, my not a knowledge issue was the exploration of space. My poor knowledge issue was how does does extraterrestrial life exist? My intermediate knowledge issue was what is the point of astronomy? And my strong knowledge issue is how do we formulate theories and models in order to explain phenomena we can't experience? Now, my knowledge issue I ended up going with was the one I just mentioned, the strong knowledge issue. And some AOKs and WKs I think fit into that are mathematics, sense perception, sciences, and reason. Now, some Ks I almost used were to what degree does sense perception contribute to our desire to find what's out there, and how can we use reason to define whether or not our theories and models are accurate. Now, my first claim was we formulate theories and models because our senses are limited, and my evidence for this was an essay on Locke's theory, Knowledge of the External World by Matthew Prislak that I got from the online internet encyclopedia for philosophy. So to summarize this article, the main limitation with our sensory knowledge is that once we are no longer sensing something, we can't be sure that it exists. The example provided by the article is that when you look at a fountain, you know that something is causing the idea of a fountain to appear in your mind. However, once you look away, that idea goes away, and there is no longer anything sensory supporting its existence. Additionally, we do not know that the underlying nature of the things that we sense. And what I mean by this is that we may have evidence that proves that they're made of atoms and whatnot, but that doesn't necessarily affect how we perceive them in the moment. In other words, we may know that something fitting a certain description exists, but not specifically that that thing exists. This example shows how limited our senses are and is in itself theory about our senses. As such, it supports this claim. My counterclaim is if our senses are limited, aren't theories and models inherently flawed? My evidence for this was Ptolemy's geocentric model of the solar system and the universe. So Ptolemy's geocentric model placed the Earth at the center of the universe, with everything else orbiting in perfect circles around us, which was later disproved by Copernican's heliocentric model, with the sun at the center of the solar system. Our models of the past have been inherently flawed, and it was done due to our limited sensory knowledge of the solar system. Of course, as our tools of knowledge got better, we were able to grow away from our older models. This evidence supports my counterclaim because it demonstrates how the limitation of our senses led to a model that was flawed. It showcases how there's a possibility that any model or theory can be errored, and we always need to be vigilant in our determination of what is true and what is not true. So my main conclusion for this claim was that Locke provides in his theory that the caveat with the idea of the in-the-moment sensory experience I explained above for my initial claim is the notion of demonstrative knowledge. So demonstrative knowledge is the pure form of truthful knowledge that humanity achieved through AOKs like mathematics and the sciences. These ideas don't necessarily require sensory knowledge to be true and just rely on our own perception of agreement between them to hold merit. The beauty of demonstrative knowledge is that if we accept new ideas, our knowledge can grow and change, and that is the limitation of the counterclaim. It disregards the notion of demonstrative knowledge, and the acceptance of new or different truths from that may accompany the evolution of humanity's current body of knowledge. So my second claim was reasons factors into what we perceive as real, and my evidence for this was the epistemology page, also taken from the online philosophy encyclopedia. So this evidence, in essence, described that reason is required in making a good argument. For example, with the idea of a priori, which was theorized by Immanuel Kant, that there is some degree of knowledge that is inherent in all human beings, or to put it in simpler terms, that we are just born with that knowledge. The most straightforward example that I can think of this for a priori is the law of non-contradiction, um, which describes that one can understand that two contradictory propositions or declaratory statements like I am currently sitting and I am standing, which cannot both be true in the same sense at the same time. This evidence supports my claim because it shows that when we experience something or record some data, we as humans by nature will analyze that data and reason if it makes sense. Now, my counterclaim is that emotion has a greater effect on what we perceive as real. And my evidence for this was Why Do People Believe in Conspiracy Theories, which is an article by Cherry Kendra. So to summarize this article, part of the reason that people believe in conspiracy theories and things like that is that they have a need to be special. A conspiracy theory, by definition, is the idea that groups are meeting in secret to plan or carry out malevolent goals. But for the most part, these theories are not supported by any concrete evidence, yet they are still believed by a substantial amount of people. This supports my counterclaim because it gives a metacognitive example of why the human brain may accept circumstantial evidence or hearsay over concrete evidence. Humans are a very social species, and as such, we have the need to conform with another outlandish idea accepted by others in the same circle, which may outweigh the soundness of reason and logic. My mini conclusion was that despite the other main points of the counter argument, which I would say are more prevalent today than I would care them to be, I still stand on the side of the main claim. If reason did not play a greater role in what we perceive as real and what can be constituted as worthy evidence, then I find it hard to believe that AOKs like mathematics and sciences would have been able to take off as the main way of answering questions about our natural world, and that so many prominent philosophers would even argue in favor of reason as our primary decision-making and understanding faculty. While we may have had blemishes in the past, like the Salem witch trials or the vaccines cause autism debate, these blemishes are still in the minority, and the school of thought of rationalism seems to hold much greater weight generally than hysteria. So my third claim was that there are phenomena we can experience, and my evidence for this was the dark energy, dark matter article from NASA. To summarize this article, the universe is spreading faster and faster apart, but if gravity truly exists, at least from our understanding, everything should be attracting closer together. So the big question was, what is causing the universe to continue expanding? Now, we've never actually observed dark energy, even with our supplementary tools, but we know it exists because we know that it affects how fast the universe expands, and we can therefore measure how much there is based on this rate. The very fact that we know so little about this proves that there are phenomena we can't experience. However, our ability to use theories and demonstrative knowledge to support them suggests that these phenomena have to exist. My counterclaim was that human tool use overcomes this limitation. And my evidence for this was Seeing the Unseen, How Infrared Cameras Capture Beyond the Invisible, which is an article on using infrared cameras as a tool to supplement our vision. And summarize this article, our ability to create tools to overcome our sensory limitations is what allowed us to become the dominant species on this planet in the first place. This evidence conveys that message in the form of the infrared camera, which takes a wavelength of light that our eyes can't see and converts it into a wavelength we can see, and uses color to convey the information in a way we can understand. In the case of the infrared camera, which conveys heat, this ranges from cool blues to hotter reds. The overcome of these limitations with tools is what allows us to have the necessary empirical data to formulate our theories. Now, my main conclusion for these claims is that the human need to supplement our senses in order to learn new things or gain an advantage, for example, radar in World War II, which allowed the British to have an advantage in the Battle of Britain over the Germans, is what facilitated our growth technologically and theoretically. In the math AOK, we consistently use models that recreate real-world phenomena in a metaphysical sense and explain them using demonstrative knowledge, such that, according to Locke's theory, we are able to continue to know something that is true by agreeing in our mind that there is a relationship between these ideas. For example, Pythagoras' theorem for right triangles allows us to find the value of an unknown side through knowledge of values of two other known sides, such that, if we know side A and side B, then we know what side C is. We may not experience this phenomena, directly with our senses, but we can prove to ourselves that it's true by demonstrating it within our mind. In my opinion, these two claims actually go hand in hand. Our inability to experience certain phenomena is what facilitated tool use, and as such, the data garnered from these tools allowed us to take this demonstrative knowledge within our own minds and make our own judgments of its worth. So in conclusion, we are able to formulate theories and models due mainly in part to the notion of demonstrative knowledge. This point from my first claim allows us to overcome the gross limitations of our senses through the use of logical thought or reason. The rationalist point of view is what allows us to separate fact from fiction and properly interpret data from our tools and sense perceptions in the natural world. Thus, theories and models are the demonstrative knowledge that explain the phenomena we cannot experience and are necessitated by our limited senses. Furthermore, tool use allows us to overcome these inherent flaws in our senses and add greater weight to the value of our theories and models, as tools can make their explanations more accurate. A limitation of my argument would be the brain in a vat thought experiment. If it were true that we were all just in a simulation, then all of my points are moot anyway. Everything we sense could be fabricated by external stimuli to our brains, not from the reality we think we are experiencing. Although I would still argue that reason would be used to interpret these stimuli, it would just be of a simulated world. So for my reconstruction, my knowledge issue, which was how do we formulate theories and models in order to explain phenomena we can't experience, was derived from the real-life situation of using the sun's gravity as a lens. This real-life situation used the concept of a gravitational lens, which we've never done before and only theorized can be done, and applies it to a unique situation, which is taking photographs of distant exoplanets at high resolutions. Now, the amount of distance here is hard to imagine, which is why I think my knowledge issue fits really well into my real-life situation. It encapsulates the need for theories to better understand the scale of the project and why we can't directly sense things such as distant celestial bodies in the first place. Another theory and model that fits in with this line of thinking is the first discovery of a gravitational wave back in 2015. Before this detection, the existence of such waves had only been theorized and never experienced. Our tools allowed us to finally be able to record this phenomena, which has greatly increased the collective knowledge of humanity. Furthermore, we just recently proved a part of Einstein's theory of general relativity. As you can see on the picture that I include on this side, we took the first ever picture of the black hole back in April of 2019, which confirmed Einstein's theory of general relativity, as the image shows a shadow that closely matches the theory's predictions of what a black hole should look like. As such, this is another close example of how my KI is supported by real-life situations and my claims that theories, models, tool use, and reason are essential in pursuing the discovery of new knowledge and experiencing what we used to call the unexperiencable. That concludes my presentation. Thank you all for listening.